doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live. I would like to live.
So very excited. We've got the technology to work, and Nomad Clan. Good morning, and thanks for joining me.
Morning.
I was just saying, it's been, when I was collating the photos that I've taken of your work from over the last few years, you kind of forget how much you've done, and for you guys, you've done so much, and now we're in this lockdown situation. Has it been a bit of an opportunity to, to reflect on some of the work that you've done and to kind of have a think about it in a, have a bit of breathing space?
Yeah, definitely. I think I feel like we've just not stopped for the last 5 years, which is actually true. I mean, it's just got more intensive over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, just constantly being either outside of the country painting, or like in the earlier days, just like always on a mega bus going somewhere painting. So like really, the pace has been insane. So I think we've both kind of reveled a little bit in having a bit of free time in the studio and, time to reflect on what the hell has just happened.
I mean, it is nice because, I don't think we would have stopped, would we? We wouldn't have, and to be honest, I don't think it's greatly healthy to be constantly going at things 100 miles an hour. So I think it gave us a chance to kind of chill out, focus, reassess what we were doing, try out new things, and see more from the outside what direction we want to take things in. So I do think weirdly it's been a positive for us. I mean, we've both gone and kind of experimented with different mediums and different materials, and we're working on some exciting stuff in terms of gallery work, which we never really had the time for. We used to be questioned all the time, have you got some work to sell, or have you got prints or anything like that? But we've never really had the time in the studio to produce this stuff, which has been really nice to actually have that time to sit back and take things from the wall and put them down onto canvas, clay, other mediums. It's kind of worked out quite nicely for us, really.
Yeah, some of those sculptures look absolutely fantastic as well, I must say.
Yeah, it's been quite frustrating at times not having more of a window at home than say a week or something. So we had a lot of catching up to do with family, and a lot of catching up to do with trying to record down some of our ideas that we've been having while we've been away. Because, you get to the end of finishing a big wall and you're absolutely shagged. There is no other way to describe it. And so you sat chilling on an evening and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be great? We could make some we could make some ornaments, we could do, and you just never get the chance to actually put that into fruition. And so it's been nice to have a bit of a breather like that. And Haley's been smashing it with clay. She just suddenly was like, I'm gonna do clay, and turned her hand to it, and within a few weeks was killing it with that stuff. And I've been producing music. Right. So it's been a nice sort of bit of a respite for other creative avenues that are leading back into our work. So the music, and we're starting to use in our videos, which is nice. I mean, I've not officially launched it yet because I'm a perfectionist. I'm driving myself insane with mixing, and I should just palm it off to someone who knows what they're doing, really. But these things, as we're fusing them together, it's starting to create this really strange world of Nomad now, almost, where we can start to really think about how do we bring all these different elements in that we've already been experimenting with. So the installations, for example, we started doing last year. How do we sort of start translating that into some of our studio at work? Is there a way of doing that in the streets? All kinds of different things. So we're just getting our creative mash on, basically.
I'm excited.
So are we.
I think it is. I see your cat's listening in there as well. By the way,
It's got a back to me. Like,
shocking.
Oh, she's looking at you now.
And I saw you were looking at, themes around identity, and especially in the digital world now that we're so just, this is our life now, isn't it? Just explain a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I guess at the moment, we've been thinking a lot about what it means to have an identity in this era. And let's face it, we kind of have two. Some of us have more. But we've got like our digital identity, our digital projection of ourselves, which probably lies somewhat in our perfect ideals of what we want to be and who we are. And we project that out there. Sometimes we project the worst sides of ourselves out there, but some of us. But I think it's that thing of like, what does it mean to have ourselves and this digital identity as well? Because often, although there's like crossover points, there is something about the way that we live nowadays that there's a lot of projection. So are we losing part of ourselves? Are we gaining a new element to ourselves? Because like the most beautiful thing about all this digital technology is that we remain connected. And at a time of such political unrest and terrible things happening, we are able to have this sort of more free information and, talk to each other and pass, experiences across the globe. What's going on with you? What's happening over there? What's happening with this? And it's very hard to not be inspired by that and really look at how much we're gaining and how much we're losing in terms of our personal experience as well. So interesting times, and it's impossible to separate your work from that, I think, at the moment. If you're truly sort of spending a lot of time thinking about these things, it puts itself into the work. So we've been developing a bit of a series called Karmic Distortion, which is to do with how the universe just kind of keeps flipping us on our heads, and we're having to adjust and adapt as human beings. And what does that mean, and how does that affect our sense of self as well?
It's so fascinating, and it's I mean, this year's a prime example, isn't it, really? We kind of, it's almost as if my day job's in news, almost like harking back to the simpler times of when everyone was arguing about Brexit. Now things are, that seems like a walk in the park now. This is, it's a challenging time, isn't it?
Very much so.
But in terms of, I suppose, is this I suppose a change of direction in a way, but you put so much thought and research into your murals in terms of them not just being a beautiful work of art, which they are, but also kind of having this depth of meaning. So is this a kind of natural progression then, do you think?
I think so. I mean, I think our murals, they're the perfect canvas to paint things with meaning that connect to the places that they are. When you take that into a studio, you don't know where this piece of work is going to end up being placed, so you can play around with it a lot more, or I feel we can. So I guess that the progression kind of lies in that also, the chance to kind of, you don't have to I mean, we like to research a lot about the heritage of places, find out stories, backstories, and that's what we put into the mural work we do. We don't have to necessarily, so it opens up more doors when it comes to the studio work, and we can kind of be more free with that and touch on things that we wouldn't necessarily do in the murals, but it allows us to kind of venture down new avenues and see where it takes us in the studio. And I find that extremely exciting. I think that's really important also.
It's kind of liberating, I guess, topically for us, because we tend to get, I'm not saying we get hemmed in, because don't get me wrong, we are absolute nerds and we love reading about the history of areas, but for some reason that's a little bit about, it's our calling card, and a lot of people enjoy that. So a lot of the public art now that we produce is often linked to that, obviously, like Ayla just said. But as much as we love that, it does, you kind of start to feel, I've got some other things that I want to talk about or I want to explore. So it's been nice to kind of start doing that, but also there is a way of putting some of that out there. We're just not we're not on walls yet, do you know what I mean? But it's good because it means that some of this stuff will hopefully start leaking out into our public art as well, or at least there'll be a crossover, because there is something to do with the past and the future that's really interesting when you put them together, do you know what I mean? And we sort of looking at where we've come from and where we're going. And this shit, are we allowed to swear on this? We are. This shit is like, just thought I'd make a check, because seriously, we are disgusting when it starts. When the swearing starts, that's it.
Fine.
But yeah, too much coffee now. But yeah, like what, you know, we've been here before as human beings, you know, we've been through pandemics, but not like this, and not in the digital era, in this, you know, situation, and not with the political tensions that we have at the moment, and all of the things that everyone is starting to become a little bit more work to, shall we say.
And I was just going to ask, just, you know, see in terms of the process of when you're creating a mural, you talk about the kind of quite exhaustive research, what comes first? Does the idea for the image come first, or is it the story first and then you build from the story and then decide which elements visually you're going to put on the wall?
It's different every time. I think it depends. I mean, some people come at us with like a brief or like a general idea, or they come with like an example of like previous work we've done and say, can you do something along this? Or there's a theme, you know, like the one behind you, there was a theme of connectivity, and we wanted to pick something that was kind of, you know, there's some heritage there in that, the messenger pigeon, you know, like we don't, it is weird. Sometimes we will have done a sketch a few years back even, and we've wanted to incorporate it. And if the right idea and brief comes up, it's nice to, you know, finally realize that in a mural. But I mean, we always, regardless of like whether there's a brief or not, we always do some research into the area and like find out like any interesting little nuggets of history that's maybe forgotten or like a little tired now, you know, and like we like to bring that back. I mean, we've got a really interesting project coming up in Doncaster, and now Doncaster has so much history, really difficult to like pick, you know, one element of it. So I mean, we like to tell stories in our work, so it's nice to sometimes like pick a few things that we find and like almost create like a storyboard or something as to like what's happened. Or, and it doesn't have to be completely obvious, it doesn't have to be like, you know, a museum illustration or something. It's like it can just have little tiny references to certain things, and like it's not always clear that what it is that we're talking about, but there's elements of things that we've read, you know, or we've watched on YouTube, or we've spoke to historians and stuff. And I think as well, by doing the research, it gives us more of a, I don't know, a feel and a connection to where we're painting. So you feel more comfortable and kind of more, I don't know, a part of that place at the time. And I think that kind of helps. But I mean, it changes every time we do a project, and I think that's what keeps it interesting. You know, we are always learning new things. So
I suppose putting that level of detail and work into your art kind of gives people a bit of ownership of it as well, in a way, or they feel that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I mean, we did one right before pre-lockdown, which it's become really significant now, because it's like, oh my god, that was the last mural we did, and it was our last like foray into like an actual mural project, you know, where you're working with an organization of sound people who are doing cool shit. And yeah, and it was in New Brighton. And the beauty of that was like, we often go to really odd, unusual places like to do muralism in the UK specifically, and I think because we're northern centric, it means that there's a lot of small towns that have been trying to do stuff. So for example, like Blackburn Open Walls has been going for quite some time, and that was like quite unique to the north at the time, you know, to have a little town that was doing something. Obviously we did Uprising Festival last year in Rochdale, and there's this growing sort of movement of muralism in small working class industrial towns. And the great thing about that is that these places are full of history and quirks and weirdness, and I like that energy when I'm at, you know, when I'm working, and I know Hayley buzzes off it as well, because you kind of can get a little lost in the storytelling elements. And with New Brighton, we did loads of research on that. That was really fun. We always get, somehow we find somebody who knows some really weird shit about a place, and like we always like tap into that. And we had like a right good fella, didn't we? I can't remember his bloody website, but we're releasing a video all about it anyway, with Bucky Go very shortly, about the process. And yeah, we always try and get lost in the place that we're visiting. And actually, these are magical little places. And New Brighton, for example, is actually like pretty full of street art now. The guys there at Rock Point have like smashed it, and they've got some really interesting plans in the pipeline. There's no slowing those guys down, so not even the pandemic slows them down. I don't know why. But yeah, so like the same with the Doncaster project. We actually went to Doncaster right before the pandemic, and went to the library there where they've got a massive archive, and spent the afternoon chilling with the regulars.
Nice.
And they had some crazy stuff to show us. You know, they were pulling out all kinds of books and papers and weirdness. So we there's always so much stuff to get your teeth into.
And what are you doing? Because it sounds, because this is, you know, like my day job's a journalist, but basically what you're doing is journalism there as well, essentially. So I mean, are you making notes? Are you recording audio? What, you know, I'm getting a bit geeky about it now, but kind of what's your, you know, your process there in gathering all of the information?
I've just got answered door. I'm going to mute this, and Hayley can do her thing.
Everything really. I mean, whatever we can gather, we're like squirrels foresting for nuts, you know, like we literally just pull at anything and everything. And I think the best way really is to talk to people, you know, and especially like the visit with the library in Doncaster. The people there, I mean, there's no better people to ask, really. That's what they do. They research the history, they compile it together, and they know exactly where you need to go and look for an interesting story. If you wanted to look into the suffragettes, there's loads there, you know. And they've all got unique ideas that when we turn up, we know nothing about a place. And then when we leave, it's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Like, there's too much in my head. Like, yeah. But I would rather that than not have an angle to go at, you know, and be clutching at straws. But yeah, I mean, we speak to people, we make audio recordings, we watch YouTube videos, we'll visit archives, libraries, old buildings, go on tours, like anything really, anything that kind of, I just find it so interesting. We both do, you know, so we just read it.
Pub meeting locals as well, and having a good chat. For whatever reason, we often seem to draw people to us for weird social times, probably because we're, you know, whatever, covered in paint and look weird as hell. So people often want to know what we're doing there, you know, in these weird local pubs. And it's amazing how proud people are of their towns, and that, you know, how extensive their stories are, because their families and their, you know, ancestry and their history is all like within them and their identity. So they just open up all this stuff. They're like little beacons of knowledge, and that's lovely as well, having that connection. That's something I think we're both missing a lot from this pandemic.
And has there been, and question to each of you really, has there been, you know, an occasion over the years where a story, or you've spoken to a certain person, or you've heard a certain story that's kind of really surprised you, opened your eyes a bit about a certain thing, and then, you know, that you've then been able to reflect that in the artwork?
Yeah, I guess like quite a few times. Well, there's often weird little symbology or little things that we put in there as we are painting that we'd never planned to begin with, and it'll have come from some strange interaction with a member of the public at some point. And it doesn't matter whether it's in a place like, I mean, maybe it does depend where you are into how often people talk to you, because when we're in like the center of New York and you're in the, you know, a cherry picker or whatever, people don't tend to like lurk around a lot. They're always moving. Whereas, say for example in Flint, people will actually like come down, they'll have a chat with you, and they'll start telling you like what they've been through. And the thing about Flint is it's a place where a lot of people have been through a lot of challenging stuff. and they're very open and want people to know and want to share. So, and there's such a community as well. So, you know, you hear stories about all kinds of things that have been going on. So we've often will like chuck a little tribute to somebody in there if we've, you know, had a conversation. And it can be anything from their initials right through to if someone says something that's about, like when we were in Marseille, somebody was telling us about like some workers, it was like some sort of national day, you know, like of something, and it was to do with the work, actually a workers' day. I think it was a socialist thing. And they used to all put little flowers or something in their, you know, in their buttonholes and stuff, the workers. So it was perfect because we were painting a giant old woman who was working in the tobacco factory that we were painting on the side of. You know, it used to be a tobacco factory. So we were like, right, we'll put one of those flowers in there. And so like it becomes really significant about the time that we were actually there as well. When the piece was painted, it starts to all just kind of, there's a synchronicity about painting on the streets. And that's something that I'm really, really missing at the moment. It's like, no.
Sorry. And Hayley, is there something that kind of stands out in your mind, you know, from people you've met along?
I was gonna mention the Marseille piece also, but like for other reasons. I mean, there's things that, so for instance, when we get commissioned to paint murals, often it's for like, you know, councils or I don't know, arts councils or various other people, but they tend to be sometimes a little bit dubious to us painting anything too political or anything that's too kind of punchy and out there. So we always try to slip that in. And like if we're in a place, like when we was in Marseille, it became really apparent that there was like an imbalance of wealth. And the, you know, we wanted to portray that in the mural without it being offensive or, you know, I mean, we painted a burnt out car on top of a woman's back with a bag of cash and like a big speedboat, like she's carrying the weight of that. And she's walking on the old Roman ruins underneath. So it's kind of like the foundations that have built up to this, you know, the wealth that's there. And they were a bit like, well, I don't know whether the burning car's the right message to put out there. And we was like, just let us do it and we'll see if anyone says it, you know, if anyone complains about it. And I mean, we managed to get it in there and people were happy, and it loses that negative, you know, like as like poverty, like it loses those negative kind of connotations to it, and it becomes, when you put it into a whole picture, it becomes something else. I mean, around the corner from the woman is a young person laid down reading, and it was like about the growth of knowledge and how do you step away from this, like, you know, tower of crap that's happening. And it's to, you know, gain knowledge and learn and like learn the history and see where your roots are and whatnot. So if we can balance it, it works nicely, and we can get those messages in there without them being like offensive or, you know, rubbing some people up the wrong way. So I guess that's like, I think the Marseille one really stands out for me with that. But there's been many different murals. Like the first one we painted in Flint, there was like water symbols and things, because we were very aware not to mention the water crisis in Flint, because they were wanting to step away from being somewhere that is recognised for this tragedy, want to be recognised for the art. But we was like, we felt a little kind of something needed to be in there to represent that. And it touched on a lot of things. Like there's an empty canoe, so there's an empty native Indian canoe, because it was basically like their land and taken, wasn't it? You know what I mean? So we wanted to represent that. And there's a kid reading a storybook, so it's about this kid reading these stories of like the past and things, which are, I mean, horrible, negative, like parts of history, but we managed to put it into a beautiful mural that kind of, you know, people are then able to read into that what they want, and, you know, take as much from it as they want to.
It's such a, you know, it's such a powerful thing, but also, do you get a sense of, I don't know if anxiousness is the right word, but you know, you're kind of reflecting like another culture and another, you know, in a different part of the world, and to, you know, to that the people are going to kind of accept it as being there? Do you kind of feel that when you're there, or do you get a sense as you go along how it's going to work out, you know?
I think we're so subtle at times, like we're so subtle, but yet we're not being censored. And I think people have a great deal of respect for that. And because these murals are read on such different levels, a good chunk of the population just enjoy it as a big, technically interesting, you know, like well executed mural. That's wow, big mural. Other people will ask questions and look at what's that about. Other people will instinctively connect with it because they have a sense that they already, you know, they've already got an understanding of some of the events or whatever might have happened there, and they'll relate to it on a certain level. There's been a few, like I think the one that we painted at Shine was probably the most interesting one, because with the responses from, you know, like were completely different on the spectrum. So on the one hand, people were like, oh yeah, it's about the conquistadors and all this amazing, you know, like the ancient history of like, and look at the guy, you know, like forlorn at sea and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but then the actual story was about karma, and it was about like this guy who actually was horrendous and basically tore up Florida, you know, killing a lot of native indigenous people to the area, and then tried to, like, you know, basically take ownership of the land. It didn't work because there's some crazy, like, powerful, like, spiritual areas around there that mean it gets swerved by, like, you know, like storms and stuff. But while he was there, you know, going and doing horrendous acts to all these indigenous people, he ended up having to flee and ended up like in the sea with all his men drowned. And that's what that's about. And but like, so it was a little bit edgy and a little bit like talking about like that karmic balance again, but it can be read on so many levels. So it's that thing of like, it looks like just a fantastic story about, you know, some epic film thing, but you only have to scratch under the say, oh, go on our Instagram to find out what they're actually about. And it does, we do sweat it out a little bit sometimes. We do have moments where we panic, I think, and just think, is this going to push too far? But generally, no, because in this day and age, you know, people are sort of putting message-based stuff out there, and there's people who paint things that I would say are a lot more challenging than how we present our stuff. It's just you have to dig a little deeper if you're inclined to.
Has there been, you know, of all the places that you've painted around the world, has there been the one that, you know, that stands out as a really great experience, or, you know, one that really stays with you? I mean, it sounds like there's been so many, to be honest.
Oh my God, so many, and for so many different reasons as well. Like, I mean, our time in the Calais jungle was amazing, you know, not necessarily the nicest time, or, you know, but we met so many really inspiring people, and out of the devastation there, you see what humans are capable of when they have nothing, and how they can, like, you know, how versatile we are as like humans. We can adapt and change, and like there was so many powerful stories we heard while we was there. I mean, it makes you stop and reflect and feel completely and utterly like thankful for everything you do have. And the same with Flint. And then, I mean, that's another place that blows my mind. It's an amazing place with some amazing people doing amazing things. And like, I find like those types of places far more inspiring and far more kind of, I find more of a connection with those places than I do, say, when we go and paint, like, not to put these places down, but like New York, and, you know, you paint a big wall and it's flashy, and you know, like, I'd rather have projects that are completely full of meaningfulness and where we meet real people and we can say something than I don't know, have a fancy experience in a nice hotel. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be some, like, something there that we can connect with, or a lesson to be learned. Like, I mean, when you sometimes when you leave a place, you just like, it changes you completely. And I think those are the best places for us. I don't know about you, Joy, but I think those types of places that we visit are definitely, they leave more of a stamp on us than anywhere else.
I think so, and I think it's also we have a tendency then to use like the framework that we would use when we go and do sort of self-initiated projects, for example. We use that framework. Then when we do get invited, say somewhere like New York or whatever, we dig in the same way for the information. We try and connect with the people that are out there that are going through whatever, and or the elements at that time. And again, there's a strange synchronicity that seems to happen with that, whereby, like, I think because of the nature of our portfolio as well, we were invited out there last year, and we got Samo. I don't know if you've interviewed Samo yet, but you should probably.
Yeah.
But like we all went out there en masse to paint for the Stonewall. Was it 50th anniversary? Yeah, of Stonewall and Pride, and it was with New York Pride and the Lisa Project, who've been doing murals around that neighborhood for some time out in Little Italy, and we knew we wanted to do something that was poignant, and we knew we wanted to do something that was about LGBTQI rights, but we also knew that we didn't just want to be doing big rainbows and happiness, because there's such a rich history of activism in New York. And let's face it, with Marsha P and stuff like that, it's all about, raising awareness for the stories that happen out there. And we hit upon some very strange stories that, about Hart Island, which actually a lot of that stuff's come to light now, because Hart Island has been used as a place, it's always been used as a place like a mass graves. I know it's dark and twisted, but they've reopened it again for the COVID nightmare that's happening out in New York. They've been hit really badly by it, and it's often for people who've been forgotten by society. So previously it was like AIDS, and before then it was like it's just dark. I won't go too far into it, but because how do you put that into Pride? like when we're talking about like this stuff, but we managed to do it. And actually, like, someone got in touch with us the other day whose father was buried on Hart Island, was an AIDS victim, and she knew exactly what it was about when she saw it, and she was blown away. She reached out to us, and it's those moments, we always try and connect people or speak for people who maybe haven't had a chance to speak, and or at least raise awareness if we can. And it can be exhaustive, because some people will just take an opportunity to paint a wall and do it, and that's great. That's that's fun, and we'll try and get at least 1 or 2 walls a year, otherwise we'd just be like nervous breakdown. But we always try to take our position of privilege now and like try and raise awareness for other things, because we're incredibly lucky. We worked really hard to get to this point, but what would be that we want to take some responsibility to try and help elevate other artists, or try and help sort of highlight a cause or history that we should know about, for example, that we don't. So
that, I was saying just before we started recording, that like when I was taking photos of your respective pieces as C Blocks and Alo in Salford, probably like maybe, and it's only like 5-6 years ago or so, to go from C Blocks and Alo to Nomad Clan to doing these murals and to where you are today. How is it kind of reflecting on that? Because I guess in a way it's been quite fast, but it probably there's so much work goes on behind the scenes as well.
I feel like it's like a decade as well at the same time. It's like double the time. I think we've aged a decade. Like at the pace we've been running, it's just like, what on earth?
Nomad Clan years are equivalent to dog years. 7 to 1. But yeah, I think, I don't know, like sometimes I do look back and I think, God, that was only like 5 years ago, you know, that was only like 2 years ago. Like it does, the time frame doesn't really sit in my head straight. Like it's just been a bit of a whirlwind. And I mean, when you're doing what you love, like constantly, like you lose all kind of concept of time and like, or where the hell you are or whatever. And I think it's when you come home and you're back with like family doing normal things like Christmas and, you know, things like that. That's when you sit and you think about like, wow, this life is weird. You know, our lifestyle is crazy. I wouldn't change it for anything, you know, but I think like with the lockdown and having more time with family and having, you know, more time to think and to kind of reflect, I think it's really important to get that balance more than ever. You know, you need to kind of keep that sense of reality and sense of time because it just carries you, you know, you get carried away in it and it snowballs, and before you know it, 5 years later, you're like, bloody hell. Let's sit down and breathe for a minute, please.
Yeah, I think we've spent a lot of time when we've been on tours trying to remind each other of how far we've come and what, you know, like, I think because we've worked so intensively together over the last 5 years, like your sense of home, you know what I mean, is like Nomad Clan to a degree when you're away, you know. So it's like, so you always feel like you've got this certain level of stability, but then when one of us inevitably spirals out, which happens on a fairly frequent basis, like, what are we doing next week? What have we just done? What were we doing then? What was that last month? You know, and it's like, you know, so we have to kind of remind each other to sort of ground ourselves and be like, right, oh no, we did this and we're here and at this point. And then, to be fair though, it's been quite a lot of it, I think, for the last year. The last year particularly was like survivalism, because the pace that we were running, I can't even remember where we were. And it's like, thank God for the apps that tell you, because otherwise we wouldn't know. And it's unbelievable how much we crammed into last year. Like, I think it's safe to say it probably nearly killed the both of us. So we needed to like have this time. In some respects, being forced to stop was the healthiest thing that could have happened for us, I think. And it's great because now we really get to look back at the fruits of our labour and go, okay, we smashed some installations. Is this what we want to do? Do we want to do more of that? You know, what do we, you know, now we've had the chance to do the studio, do we want to do more of this? What was unhealthy about last year? Otherwise we would have, like Hayley said, would have still been on that same trajectory and we probably would have burnt out completely. So, you know, it's that moment of realization of, okay, there needs to be balance, and no matter how much you want something, yeah, you should work like you're gonna die tomorrow, but at the same time you should remember that you could, and like slow the fuck down.
And does it help being a duo, being partners on the road, in terms of being able to manage things or sound each other out about stuff as well?
Oh, definitely does. I mean, I don't know how, because I've never experienced this sort of level of painting, like traveling around on my own, but I can't imagine it being anywhere near as good. You know, you get to bounce ideas, you get to like, you have someone else to vibe off when something's really exciting, you know, you've got someone to talk to, you know, you've got someone there as like, you know, if anything's going wrong, if you've got any, you know, there's always somebody, you know, and I think that's really nice, and I really like that. And I take my hat off to artists that do it on their own, because I think it's a really challenging kind of lifestyle. I mean, you're thrown sometimes into situations that you don't even know what it's going to turn into, you know, and to do that on your own, it's like, it's quite, I guess, I don't know, I think that'd be quite difficult. Like, you'd have more to overcome, and, you know, more challenges that you're up against, and you have to rely, I guess, more on organisers and stuff like that, whereas we're quite self-sufficient, aren't we? And we work well together, and I think it's just nice to have somebody else there, I think.
Yeah, that's it. And stuff goes wrong, you know, when something goes wrong, like if you're alone on a job, I imagine you start spiraling. So say for example, I don't know, machine's broken, or like some of your paint hasn't shown up and it's a crucial bit of paint or whatever else, rather than just freaking out, you know, there's always somebody else to kind of counterbalance and try and problem solve. So, you know, we've got that dynamic whereby if one of us is like, oh my God, like I've just painted a thing, it looks like a potato or whatever, the other's like, maybe this, maybe that, you know, and you've got another brain, another set of eyes that can help tell you, well, that eye's like leaving a face, sort it out. Do you know what I mean? So there's that. And then also, like, we've both got different things that we're really good at. So like Hayley's like more, like she's quite logical. So like, and sort of if something requires a certain, I don't know, like we need a meter ruler, or there's like, or like how the hell are we going to paint this thing? She'll kind of like be like, right, what if we this, what if we that, you know? So her problem solving skills come in that sense, and you know, like we sort of like balance each other out somewhat. I think with when we're working on walls, you know, it's super handy to have that, just for reassurance as well.
Good combination. It's funny, you've just made me think actually of when I was speaking to Dale Grimshaw about, you know, when people go onto Instagram and they see like perfect mural, beautiful piece of art, and it's, I would have probably just went and painted it in a couple of days, and yeah, it's great and everything else. You know, the trials and tribulations behind each mural, I love that, you know.
Oh God, we've had some funny ones. I think we've had some of the most ridiculous experiences. When I look back, you can't help but laugh when you think about some of the things that have happened for us. I mean, I feel like at times we've got some sort of bad juju floating around with us. You know what I mean? It's like, how has this happened? But we always find the humour in it. I think because there's two of us. Again, like I don't think it'd be so funny if one of us was trying to handle it alone. You know. But yeah, anything from weather, like we've painted on the edge of a hurricane. I mean, that's hilarious because that was that Florida mural. We thought we were going to have to go and chill out in someone's basement, you know, like think storm shelter for a few days. But we just cracked on like idiots. But yeah, like there's no end to the stories, and I think that's something that we enjoy as well, because then when we meet up, we get to reminisce on these crazy experiences we've had together, which is super cool. And the experiences are almost as like inspiring sometimes as like what you've actually painted. So
you mentioned before, you know, about last year being so crazy and really busy, and it's funny because I remember, you know, following you on Instagram, thinking, you know, there's another, you know, here's another brilliant work of art in another place. And then someone was like, oh, have you heard, you know, Nomad Clan are organising this Uprising festival in Russia? I was like, they've not got much time. Are you sure it's gonna? And then, you know, it all happened and it was amazing. And how did he pull it off?
Yeah, we nearly had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, we had a good team of people and we had probably numerous nervous breakdowns. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting to be on the other side of it. And I think it's given us a massive respect for anyone who puts these things on year in, year out, because it is so stressful, and the amount of things you have to consider, and like, you know, everything goes wrong at a festival. Like when you're painting just one mural, you'll have your little hiccups, and you know, a bucket of paint might get spilled and your lift might not work, but everything goes wrong at a festival at some point along the way. And it's just like, how do you like smooth it over and move on and carry on? And I mean, we had a really good team behind us, and the council were really Rochdale Council were really helpful. And we did manage to pull it off, and like, we're hoping to do more of that in the future, maybe not on such a level as like 12 murals and then a day where 24 people are painting all at the same time. And not painting a wall while we're organising and running a festival.
Pretty big wall, by the way, as well.
Oh, I know. And I mean, I think there was a lot of things that we learned by doing that, that if we ever do it again, which I hope we will, and there are plans to, once this COVID thing's blown over or whatnot, we would definitely change and reassess. And like either do one or the other, paint it or like run it, like not both.
It was particularly crazy. I mean, like, not only that, but we were at the height of Nomad Clan project as well. So like Hayley was like spending all her time like on the, you know, getting this festival going. Like she was basically the lead on it, to be fair. And like there was so much time that it took, you know, on the run up to the festival itself. Like it was flat out. So we're juggling all this stuff. In the meantime, we're about to foray into our very first installation at Urban Nation Berlin's like massive thing they do every September, and it was like Yasha's, you know, penultimate, I guess a penultimate installation. It was huge. Like it was going to go off. You know, there was robotic things walking around and like crazy. Took over the entire, you know, stretch of street, and it was like a museum. It was like an incredible installation. I've never seen anything like it. So we were really being thrust into a new arena and a new platform and a new medium, and all, you know, we were trying to plan this whilst being in the middle of production at a mural festival, whilst painting a giant mural. And it was just like, I think we had a few moments there where we were looking at each other and we were like, we've lost our minds. Like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, what am I? Like, who are you? You know what I mean? And we were just on one. We just didn't know how to stop. And luckily it didn't have any sort of, at that very moment, didn't have a massive negative impact, because somehow we managed to bounce from that festival where there was quite a lot, there was hiccups, there was things that we were constantly trying to make sure. And it went well, all things considered, but then to move off, immediately fly to Berlin to start this this new thing for us on this massive platform. It was just like, how do we do this? And we managed to do it. And to this day, I don't know how we managed to do that. And then we went on to paint a mural in Flint afterwards. And then, you know what I mean? And it was like, by the end of it, I think we were both just totally shell-shocked and like, I don't even know, like if we were to have to do that again at that pace this year, I don't think we'd be able to do it at all.
We're too old now.
We aged.
It's aged, the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Years, remember? Nomad Clan years.
Nomad Clan years. I was going to say, I have to shout out the Phil for the patience of a saint with that platform.
I've never got so close to like a cherry picker in all my life. I knew that cherry picker inside out by the end of it. I had the guy on the phone. I was like inside the machine, still wearing a harness from, you know, whilst painting the wall down there, running up and down that hill. You know, like it was just insane. The London police lads as well, like their machines were all over the shop. And it was all because it was a bank holiday weekend, and you know that we couldn't get any sort of service out there, so it was just like we had to do some crazy shit to get like stuff sorted, but we got there in the end, didn't we? We just didn't want to compromise. You know, we wanted Filth to finish, and we wanted to give it, so we extended his stay. We did everything we could, because the festival for us was really about providing for the artists and serving the artists, because they were doing us a solid by being there and helping change the face of Rochdale. And every single one of them was selected on the back of their incredible portfolios and their attention to detail and the way that they would connect with the community as well. We just knew they were all sound people and that they would make the most of the situation. Like, you can't necessarily always reach out to certain artists and be like, hey, come to Rochdale, it's great, you're gonna have a great time, because you know, like, you've got to just, you know, you need artists that you know are going to make the most of a situation in any place in the world, and they're all stellar artists who did that and really put time and effort in. His Filth's piece particularly, he spent a lot of time researching, a lot of time really connecting with the history of the place, and it's, you know, by far, I imagine, is like something that a lot of Rochdalians will be super proud of, you know. Very,
very classic, isn't it? And actually the building's fantastic as well, isn't it? I'm not sure what was or used to be, or is it like a giant little building, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. I mean, it's gorgeous, but I think it's such a penultimate piece because of where it's facing. Everyone sees it when they get on the bus and stuff like that. I mean, the town hall's just over there, and he was incredibly inspired by that because it's a stunning building that everyone should go and visit.
And actually, I think, one of the great things about it is actually it's a place where you wouldn't necessarily, if, someone listed, these are places to go and see amazing world-class street art in the UK, Rochdale probably wouldn't, at least until now, probably wouldn't have been anywhere on anyone's list. But it really, it stands out because I suppose one thing is you can walk around it quite easily, can't you? But there's a really interesting mix of different buildings. So it seems to, because it's quite a traditional, it's quite a beautiful town, actually. It's quite traditional, but it stands out more because of that almost as well.
Yeah.
And this is one of the great things I love about street art as well, is when you see people, and I sort of kind of went there, over the days and afterwards as well, is people of any, age, background, whatever, all enjoying it, and the unexpected people, when it's like, the elderly couple looking up at the mural saying, oh yeah, okay, really, it's really nice, So
yeah, definitely. We had, I mean, one of the most important elements was the tours, I think, as well, don't you reckon, Haley? Because was it Inspiring Cities that did it?
Yeah.
And that was...
There was such a mix of people on them tours, weren't there? Like, all age groups and stuff, and I think that's one of the things I absolutely love about street art. It's so accessible, and like these people will have never seen anything on those sorts of scales. And I think as well, like when we put the idea out first to Rochdale and to the council, like the council were well up for it, but then they have to put it out as like an idea for they have to release it like to the public that this is happening. And I think a lot of people didn't really understand what it meant or what was coming, and they had a really kind of a different idea of what large street art murals would look like. And we got so much positive like like messages from people afterwards, didn't we? And like I think and what I love is like what you mentioned was like it's done in a place that wouldn't necessarily have seen this stuff otherwise, and it's like it's done on a level as well where it's like it smacks you in the face. Like there's huge walls now. I mean, Curtis's big like Cock of the North piece is just brilliant. It just you walk around the corner and it's just there. It's massive. Like there's nothing like that in Rochdale up until that point. And we came and we just like over a weekend just plastered the place in art.
I think I just wanted to point before I forget as well that we set a brief that was quite sensitive to Rochdale's achievements and stuff. So the artists had quite an extensive body of research for them to like dip into, because so in many respects it was almost an extension of a Nomad Clan project. So like using some of our like methodology of how we create our pieces. And I think like that was quite interesting for how, watching how the artists took those on and seeing what they came up with was super exciting for us. But also because, we integrated that into one of the reasons Inspiring Cities worked so well is because he is actually originally from the north and a bit of a nerd as well, and enjoys, the industrial heritage and history of the north. So he was integrating that into the tours as well and talking about what the murals were about and the symbology within it. So it actually became more of a history tour about Rochdale as much as it was about the muralism. So that entire thing really was very, very Nomad Clan, but it was so refreshing to have this like explosion of like creativity. And the same with the music, everything was kind of localized to a degree, and everybody that we'd selected was more or less UK based because, it's more efficient. It's, we don't have to use planes and like contribute to like the environmental disasters that we're living in and stuff, and like just trying to keep things like quite switched on. And that was really, really nice to do that and to make everything the focus to be about mainly the artists and their practice and Rochdale as a place. I think that's why it went so well, because we knew what the artists' requirements would be and what they needed. We didn't want to put like too many time constraints on them and pressures, because we know that like when you get in your flow and you start to really embrace something, you don't necessarily want to be pulled off the wall. And the way that the artists and the staff integrated themselves within Rochdale community was brilliant, because it was a breath of fresh air for a lot of the locals, you know, to have such a vibrant, diverse team coming in there with all their skills and talents and passions. And it was a chance to showcase a lot of the creative stuff that is actually going on around here as well. So like the urban artistry lads, you know, running the jams and stuff. You know, the local graph distribution, you know, suspect package helping support us, and you know, all these different elements came into place, and it was just really nice to watch it all, you know, the synchronicity and everyone coming together to celebrate what we've actually got going off, which is exciting, because I'm seeing more of it. I'm seeing it now as well, even though we're in this digital bubble. You know, there's a lot of people emerging, doing these podcasts, having these conversations, and a lot of it is starting to become more Northern centric, which makes me very happy, because there's a lot of talented people out here, you know, and a lot of interesting stuff going on.
So does it, I wrote down a question saying Uprising Fest sequel. So now Hayley, you said, you know, possible, but, you know, would you, and it's, even though it sounds like a huge undertaking and a bit of a stress, but would you, you know, look for another similar kind of town like that who would accept something like that being there, do you think? Or is it too early to say?
Silence. I was waiting for Hayley to answer.
I was like, how much can we say?
We've been approached, haven't we, by quite a few councils who, pre-lockdown, to be fair, I know a lot of budgets have been, you know, squeezed.
We shall see.
Okay. Well, I'll be there. Wherever it is, I'll be there for sure. I mean,
well, you know.
Okay.
We do want to do it, and I think one of the strategies that we kind of hoped, I mean, it takes a lot of effort, but like one of the strategies we kind of hoped was to, once we'd got the blueprint and the framework, which, you know, was sort of like pulled together, that the idea was eventually we'd be able to kind of build it up enough to take a step back and allow opportunities for other people to run these uprisings. So the idea, it would be a ladder platform for other people to then take ownership of uprising and run their own, but with our guidance and our support and our nurturing and our contacts and everything else, so that we could kind of oversee it. Now, in theory, that sounds brilliant, but the problem is that it still requires a lot of headspace, and I think whilst things are so up in the air and confusing as it stands, and we have to wait and see what happens within the arts, we're still like very, very keen on doing that, but we have to see how things are going to shape out, because sadly I'm worried. My worry is that, you know, the money's going to be pulled from certain pockets, and the arts and music is always the first ones to be hit hardest by this stuff. But interestingly enough, in the north, I would say specifically, there's quite a lot of pots, you know, little pockets of money that have kind of been put aside for some of the public art stuff previous to this, and they're still keen to do things, but it's maybe not, you know, it's maybe more passion projects where I'm going to think of ways of like, okay, so how do we get other financial help in the, you know, to do this stuff? And it may be looking at you know, sponsors, or like, you know, sponsors from local businesses that are still thriving, you know, just really getting on the DIY hustle of like, how can we make these things work? But again, that requires a lot of time and effort, and we still need to be making art in the studio and taking on projects for Nomad Clan in order to feed ourselves. Balancing. We're pretty good at juggling though, eventually.
It must feel, I mean, despite, you know, the huge uncertainty at the minute, it must feel pretty good actually to be in a situation where these are things that you can be thinking about and actually giving something back.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now's the time as well, like I will say this, and I'm starting to implement this more and more into my day-to-day, and now's the time to support those people who have been in the scene for a long time, who are struggling, you know, the artists who are trying to make, you know, like they're making things and they're selling stuff, and you know, like I'm trying to support local artists as much as possible by buying pieces as and when I can. And even, you know, like even if you can't do that, you know, like sharing other people's stuff on your platforms. And, you know, these are all things that like, they're great ideas, and putting it into practice and remembering to do it is something as well. But like, you know, as and when I think if everybody, it's now's the time for people to come together and support each other across the board of the arts, like that. And I mean that, you know, whether it's film, whether it's musicians, you know, and anyone. I think it's about doing that now, because we've all been using it. We've all been using and abusing it this whole time, because what the hell else are we going to do? You know, sat captive audience, you know, so now's the time to throw your shit out there and throw other people's shit out there and support each other and talk about some of the atrocities that are going on as well. And like, you know, really, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing more of it. And I think as much as this time sucks, it's also so needed. Like the changes that are coming about are like super, super important. And it's time to switch on and look at this stuff and reach out to each other. You know, I'm hoping it's going to unite the creative communities more so than ever and bring people together. And I think we're all starting to realise how, you know, how lucky we are and how much we love the festivals. You know, it's less whinging about experiences at festivals and more about, holy shit, I wish we were doing festivals, you know what I mean? And like, I miss the community, and I miss all the people that I've met that are in it and I've hung out with and had a beer with at times, you know. And I know like a lot of people are in the same boat now. So what I'm expecting or hoping for when all this shit sort of finds a little bit more level is that we're going to have a huge explosion of creativity and fingers crossed, you know, opportunities. They might not be money ones, but they may well be just, you know, like passion projects and people coming together, which is exciting. And that's where great shit's born from, to be fair. So
yeah. That kind of just blown me away, that. But no, thank you. I was just before we draw it to a close, I was just going to ask one more thing of each of you, actually, which is basically just if there's anyone who you're into at the minute, or who you're influenced by, or who you think people should be looking out for, shout out.
Oh Christ. You start, Haley.
Well, we've got our obvious influences that never change and have inspired us loads, like obviously Utam Crew, Faith 47, you know, the big players. But like more recently, I don't know, I've been looking more at like sculpture artists and, you know, portraiture in clay and things like that. So it's took me down another avenue of art to appreciate. And I'm not well versed on all the names of the artists because at the moment I'm just feeding my brain with as much of that I can get hold of. But like, I don't know, pull influences from everywhere, you know, through music, films, there's too many to even mention. Like, no doubt Joy's got a list as long as her arm.
Well, actually, at the moment, I'm finding that I'm just spending a lot of time looking and absorbing, and if something really resonates with me, making note. My head's so full of shit anyway, so like I have to write this stuff down, but like I'm trying to look at who's doing what and when, and you know what this stuff's about. But there's some really innovative, interesting bits and pieces knocking around out there. But I would like to shout out Persevere. Is that how you say it? In London, the guy, he's been doing his machine stuff. He used to run Monty's. Yeah, it's like he's created this machine and it makes these like crazy drawings, and they're really sort of quite psychedelic and interesting. But he's been on the hustle for ages and always supported street art down in London, down in Brick Lane. What else? Oh, I mean, the other thing I was going to say is we're doing a lot of like small things that we wouldn't normally get a chance to do. So Paul Monsters, is that his name?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's putting a little exhibition together to raise money for a kidney charity, and it's called This One's For You. And like, yeah, that's a super cool little project that we're going to contribute some stuff towards that. But also things like the Junkyard Jam. I mean, what the hell? Like, that's super cool in Crewe, and like, I have to shout that because not only are they, you know, our mates, but like really, really amazing, like self-funded, self-made, but it's like a playground for street artists and graph heads who get to go and do stuff and watch it be demolished at the end on cars and stuff and crushed up. Love it. But yeah, there's just so many fresh, interesting things. Musically, you don't want to get me started because all I do is listen to music and paint, and it's just disgusting. Like, I'm just obsessed. But painting wise, Spencer Little is doing some really interesting, more installation-y, politicized stuff out in the US. I mean, all eyes on the politicized stuff at the moment, to be honest. That's the things that's resonating the most for me, like people who are putting messages out there and challenging. In Decline, little, the videos, the multimedia stuff. There's loads of it. Like, you'll have to edit this like no end because so much ramble.
I've got time. No, but honestly, I feel like I could just speak to you guys all day, and it's just, it's nice to have you here, albeit in my living room, kitchen, whatever. But no, I really look forward to what comes next in the projects you've got going on at the minute. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.